Governor, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. In 2015 to 2016, there were 222 educators in Texas that were investigated for having inappropriate relationships with students. What impact do you think this law will have on those numbers?
That number is unacceptable. I will not tolerate that as governor of the state of Texas, which is why I signed this law into effect. This law makes the punishment for these teachers as well as administrators so stiff they will not be able to engage in this behavior anymore.
How was this able to happen in the first place, where these teachers were basically allowed to go from school district to school district quietly?
This happened in part because of new technology where teachers were able to communicate with students through texting and things like that, but also in part because it was tolerated by some principals and some administrators who either wouldn't terminate a teacher or they would allow that teacher to transfer to a different school. Whatever the cause, I'm putting a stop to it. By signing SB 7 today, the punishment is so severe, no teacher, no principal, no administrator will be able to tolerate this disgraceful conduct anymore.
So that starts September 1st, and I'm wondering, as part of this law, because you mentioned it, the texting between the teacher and the students, does this now require or give the school districts options, or do they have to make it so that teachers and students can't communicate that way? And if so, how do they police that?
Well, it is very important for teachers and students as well as parents to be able to communicate effectively and swiftly all together. And so texting, I think, can and should still be allowed. It's just there has to be greater policing of it, but also greater consequences for whenever anybody steps beyond the bounds and engages in inappropriate behavior. There's one easy standard here, and that is teachers should not have inappropriate relationships with their students. If they do so, there will be stiff consequences.
And so I'm wondering, you talked before about having a law, part of the law is the school districts, not only the superintendents, but now the principals are going to have to report this to the state. Is the state going to keep a database of these teachers?
Yes. Now that administrators have to report this information to the state will keep all records about this to make sure that we are holding schools, principals, administrators, and teachers accountable.
And when this was happening before, as I understand it, the teachers, the school districts rather, wanted this to go away so that they wouldn't have to be tied to costly lawsuits. So now does this basically, in some sense, force a lawsuit? And what do you think the impact will be on these costly lawsuits on these school districts?
In addition to the penalties now imposed by the state, I believe that schools and teachers are going to be subject to civil liability because of lawsuits brought by parents. And so we will ensure that there really is no alternative for schools to comply with these laws and for teachers to comply with these laws.
And you would encourage the civil lawsuits as well?
I encourage the stiffest and toughest penalty against any teacher, against any school that allows this reprehensible type of conduct to occur.
And it's been that serious a problem in your estimation, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the country?
In context, listen, we have some of the top-ranked schools in America, some of the top-ranked teachers in America. Their reputation is being tarnished by a few bad apple teachers that have gotten out of control. We want to shut down any type of inappropriate teacher-student relationship.
Let me ask you about some other topics at the Capitol these days. We're at the end of the session. The bathroom privacy legislation. What specifically do you want to come out of the bill?
This is very common sense, and that is we want to ensure, especially with children at our schools, not to have to share locker rooms or showers or bathrooms with people with the opposite sex. And so at a bare minimum, we need to make sure that we have a common sense privacy law for our students. More broadly, if we can ensure that women who use restrooms have privacy that they want and desire, that would be great also. But here's the deal. We are so close between the House and Senate. It's almost inexcusable for them not to come together and get something passed.
So how much pressure are you putting on them to get together so that you avoid a special session?
For the past 2 months, I've been involved in shuttle diplomacy between the House and Senate, trying to hammer out this deal. We will continue that diplomacy as well as pressure to make sure we get a bill passed.
Texting while driving, that bill goes to your desk. Are you going to sign it?
Texting while driving has proved to be deadly dangerous. It needs to stop. This law is a step in the direction of making that stop. Now, there is one thing I wanted to see, and that is if the state passes a law like this, it should preempt the multitude of city and county ordinances that have their own regulations on texting while driving or using a phone while driving. I'm going to be looking at the law to see the extent to which that is accomplished.
And if it's not?
Well, it's too early to tell. I'm going to take a look at it, and I'll give it the attention that it deserves.
Let me just ask you about sanctuary cities very quickly, because the major chiefs in Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, and the other big cities have come out against it, saying they think this is dangerous and these communities will be less safe because people, especially those undocumented, are going to be afraid to come to police if they're the victims. How do you respond to that?
I responded to it in an opinion piece published in the Dallas Morning News recently. Listen, sheriffs across the state of Texas, including the Sheriff's Association, the sheriffs and police chiefs on the Rio Grande border, who deal with this far more than what you may deal with it, let's say, in Dallas. They join with me in making clear this poses no danger to anybody other than those who are criminals who are wanted by the federal government. We made clear that there is no danger about the so-called show your papers, but also we made clear that if you are a victim of a crime, if you are a witness to a crime, you have protections from being confronted about your immigration status if you report those crimes to police.
And so this is not a case, do you think this is a case where opponents are ginning up fear?
Right. Well, one of the most disturbing things in the aftermath of my signing the SB 4 is the fear-mongering going on in certain communities that actually harm the people they claim they are protecting. There is nothing to fear for anybody who is not a criminal, anybody who's not doing anything wrong, anybody who's not wanted by the federal government.